About my prominent role in the game. Yeah. I'm the Harvey Milk of Clarksville.
Alright guys, Murph's here, and today we're going to be talking about some considerations for concealed carry weapon selection. Now I get this question all the time from friends and family. Hey, I just got my permit, or I'm planning on getting my concealed carry permit, or I'm looking for a new carry gun. What should I get? And pretty much everyone's either looking for me to just tell them what they should go buy, or they've got a couple of things that they're considering. They want to know my opinion. I give them my opinion, and then also a couple other competitive options out on the market for them to consider as well. And I've had this conversation with so many people so often and thought about it myself that I've managed to come up with kind of more or less a concept of what to ask and talk about in order to be able to draw out the best solution for whoever it is that I'm talking to, and that's what I want to cover today. Now, in general, when it comes to CCW, I have a lot of CCW guns. I spend a lot of time thinking about concealed carry. I spend a lot of time planning my entire day around concealed carry, especially since I can't conceal carry at my workplace, so I have to figure out how to work around that a lot in my life. I also do not believe in one-size-fits-all solutions when it comes to concealed carry. That's why I have so many options, and I give myself a lot of flexibility in this category. There's a couple of ground rules and stuff like that I use in the selection of my day-to-day concealed carry, which would be a whole video on its own. And I want to warn you guys right now, there's a lot of concepts that we're going to talk about today that really deserve their own video. So I'm going to go ahead and warn you ahead of time. I'm probably going to go down some rabbit holes. I'm going to try to mitigate it as much as I can. But back to the actual subject and through our first rabbit hole, as it would turn out. One-size-fits-all solutions are not always going to work when it comes to different wardrobes and all that kind of stuff, or different places that you're going. My intent for concealed carry is that I have an option for everything from being in a Speedo on the beach trying to tan my cheeks, all the way up to I'm wearing a parka in Antarctica. That is the scale of clothing options that I might be wearing, and what I want to have paired to a handgun. That is my level of dedication to concealed carry. I want to conceal carry every waking minute of the day that I am not in my castle, in my home, in my place of safety. And I actually know quite a few guys that even carry in their place of safety. That's how they maintain their place of safety, is they carry a handgun from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep. And then that gun's still on their bedside table in that in-between time. So, I really want to hit this video, especially because in the last couple of years alone, the CCW market has been the fastest growing of the Second Amendment associated markets. And women are actually the fastest growing demographic within that market. And that's one of my favorite things about it. That's another thing that I'm very passionate about, trying to make sure that everybody is armed. And firearms are a great equalizer when it comes to that. I was actually just talking to somebody about that yesterday. So with that, I think it's really great that women have been hopping into this market, because you know what? You're a strong, independent woman, and you don't need no man. And there's a difference between having a partner that makes you feel loved and safe, and then also still having the capacity to be able to keep yourself safe. You don't have to be a damsel in distress, and that's a really great thing. It's my sage outlook on that for today. That one's free, but the next one you're going to have to pay for. Just keep that in mind. Now, especially currently with pandemics and riots and possible infringements on rights and all that kind of stuff, people are just buying up all kinds of handguns right now, and everyone's looking for a self-defense handgun all over the place. I'm getting tons of questions, and I'm seeing people in gun shops asking all these kinds of questions and buying up the handguns and all that stuff. And there's a booming market. So this video is addressed to these first-time buyers and these panic buyers and all that kind of stuff. We still got to think about what it is that we're doing, guys. So with this, there are 5 considerations that I have, or that I want you to think about whenever you're considering a concealed carry weapon. The first one is your proficiency. This is very important. You have to take a very honest look at your proficiency. How experienced are you in the safe handling of firearms? Now, if you're a first-time gun buyer, did you grow up shooting? Did you used to shoot with dad out on the farm or something like that? Were you in Boy Scouts of America and maybe you shot some 22s or something like that? Or have you never touched a gun at all before? If those are the cases, you need to seek instruction. If you've never handled a firearm before and now you've decided that you're concerned for your safety and you want to go out and get a concealed carry weapon or a defensive weapon, you need to seek instruction. There are tons of people out there who can do it. The rates are very low. Even an hour's worth of safe handling instruction is better than nothing. Now, what I'm also concerned about are those guys who claim that they grew up shooting, they have all this type of knowledge. I've been that person before, and then I've gone and done something stupid with a firearm. Don't be that guy. So, if maybe you haven't refreshed in a while, I'll go ahead and give your ego that break. Maybe you haven't refreshed on safe firearms handling and good, solid practices. Maybe seek instruction. Maybe talk to somebody. Get a buddy who shoots a lot and go to the range with them and make sure you're doing things right. There's nothing wrong with the gut check on that type of stuff, guys. Everyone needs one, and it's better somebody tell you, hey, stop doing that unsafe practice before you actually conduct an unsafe practice and hurt yourself or others. Now, that proficiency in firearms, that really has to play into a comfort level. Are you comfortable enough to be able to have that handgun safely around you and other people every day? Or even occasionally, maybe you don't carry every day. You should be carrying every day. If you're going to dedicate yourself to concealed carry every day, but you need to be safe while you're doing it. You have to have that comfort. Get instruction. It'll give you that comfort. Go to the range. It'll get you that comfort. Now that also kind of plays into our second point, which is features. These things build on top of each other, and that's why I have them lined out in this way. So what are features that you want to be concerned about? So this Smith & Wesson M&P shield is indicative of one of the features that a lot of people will talk about, safeties. Are you somebody, based on your proficiency and your comfort level, who feels that you need a safety on a firearm? You need a manual safety, something that you have to apply in order for the gun to be safe. Perhaps you are a little more proficient, or you went and you got some training and stuff like that, and now you feel completely comfortable with something like a Glock, that though it has internal safeties that make it safe, that keep firing the striker out of alignment and make it drop safe and all that kind of stuff. It has those features, but it has no external applied safety on it. Well, if either one of these guns is safe, but it's all about your comfort level. What makes you feel okay about the choices that you're making? The same can be said for revolvers. The only applied safety on a revolver is a firing pin block to make sure it doesn't discharge should it be dropped, and the heavy double action pull. Those are your safeties on a revolver. If that's something that makes you uncomfortable, if that's not a feature that you're after and it doesn't play into your comfort level, then this is not the gun for you. Now, also when it comes to features, we could talk about things like slide releases. Some concealed carry handguns, none that I have present here, don't have external slide releases. Things like Walther PPKs and the old SIG P230 and P232 don't have external slide releases. That's really great because there's nothing to snag coming out of the holster. It's not going to grab onto clothing or anything like that. So that's very effective. That makes for a very smooth presentation, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to weapons handling and maybe disassembly, it might be a little more difficult for you to handle. That's another role that features play in general. Things like exposed hammer on a revolver. Once again, on a draw, this could catch on to a shirt, or maybe get stuck against a pocket if you were pocket carrying. As opposed to the Smith & Wesson Model 642, which has no exposed hammer. So you could actually, a lot of people like to talk about how you could fire this from a pocket. I mean, I guess you could, but it's not exactly the safest most accurate way to shoot a gun. But yes, if somebody was at bad breath distance, you could shoot them through a pocket with this because there's no external hammer to get gummed up. Same deal with a Browning hipower. Browning hipower or a 1911 versus an M&P Shield or a Glock. It's feature sets, external safeties, slide releases, hammers, magazine disconnects. Now, magazine disconnects are another big question. If you don't know what that is, magazine disconnect means that when see, right now I have a magazine in the gun. This is a Browning BDA 380. Magazine in the gun, gun fires. I remove the magazine, and now the trigger has been disconnected from the hammer, rendering the gun incapable of firing. That's a safety feature. There are an awful lot of people who get very concerned about things like, say, for the takedown procedure on a Glock, if the striker is cocked, you first have to release the striker, which will then allow you to disassemble. It seems that a lot of people forget some firearms handling rules and often shoot themselves because they forget to clear the handgun and make sure that there's no ammunition in the chamber before they go cleaning it. Well, if you're someone that's not within your comfort level, you don't like the idea of having to pull the trigger before disassembly, then that's not the gun for you. You might be looking at some of these other options, like perhaps the Browning hipower or the Browning BDA 380. Now, we get into our third point, which is size. Unequivocally, everybody shoots a larger handgun better. No one looks at, say, a Glock 42 and say, "Oh, I'm going to shoot that so good. That's my bullseye gun. That's what I'm going to shoot all the time." Nobody does that. But you give someone a full-size handgun, and they're more likely to be able to shoot it better. So that's what everyone wants to default to being their concealed carry handgun. When I was much younger, I thought that full-size handguns were the way to go. You got all this capacity and all this, it was so much easier to shoot the gun well and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, that's what you want. You want a full-size gun, so you've got options. That's what's going to give you options. And you watch movies and all that kind of stuff, and everyone's got full-size guns, and they're getting on all these shootouts and all that kind of stuff. But a much younger version of myself would be very depressed to know that I've made it to the age of 30 and have not had a single massive gun battle with a methed out motorcycle clown gang. Hasn't happened once. It's very disappointing. The problem with big guns is big guns are hard to conceal. All of the time. Now, every gun that I have out here, at some point I have concealed carried. Keep that in mind. So, I have concealed carried this Browning hipower. It's only been in winter. It's been when I've had a coat to help me keep from printing. Because the biggest thing about concealed carry is not letting anyone know that I'm carrying. That's the thing that I'm worried about. I don't like open carry, I don't like printing, and I try to do everything I can to make sure that I'm not doing either of the above. So, I have absolutely carried something this big. But at the other end of the spectrum, I have a Glock 42 because when all else fails, I am still able to completely conceal this handgun. This little 380 caliber handgun fits pretty much everywhere. But a smaller handgun is harder to shoot. So it's easier to hide, but it's harder to shoot. Well, the biggest thing about the shooting aspect of concealed carry is if you don't have a handgun at all, then you're not shooting anybody. So even if it's difficult to shoot, at the very least it's available so that you can shoot it. That's also a weight consideration. So a heavier handgun soaks up more recoil and it's easier to shoot. But heavier handgun is harder to carry around, and it's definitely going to kind of change your clothing outlook. You're gonna have to wear a heavier duty belt. You might have to wear baggier pants, and it's still gonna weigh down on you, and it might be uncomfortable for long periods of time, which might drive you to not want to carry the gun. How's that helpful? This Browning hipower, as much as I like having a larger gun with greater capacity because I do want to carry the largest gun I can get away with. The ambidextrous safety on this gun kind of grinds into my lower back every time I carry it, and it is not enjoyable. I still carry it, I muscle my way through it, but it doesn't make me jump to it as an option. Now, something like this Smith & Wesson Model 642 weighs right around 20 ounces. This is extremely light. However, it is extremely uncomfortable to shoot, and it is very difficult to shoot well. You can do it, and it's possible, and if your life depends on it, it really won't matter how unbearable it is to shoot. Recoil can be quite snappy in this gun, guys, especially if you're putting in like plus P loads. This thing becomes very brutal on your hand. However, you've got it, which means that you've got options, and you've got it, which means that you can defend yourself and others. So 5 shots of 38 is better than 1,000 shots of nothing. Now, from size, we get into caliber, which is the next big thing. Now, once again, first rule of a gunfight is have a gun, and ultimately, I'm not going to shy away from anybody shooting at me. Or wait, no, I am going to shy away from anybody shooting at me. If you shoot at me with a 22, I'm not going to laugh at you because you're shooting at me with a 22 and keep coming at you. No, I'm going to find cover because I inherently don't want to be shot. However, that does not mean that I advocate for carrying a 22. Most people draw their line at 9mm being the minimum. There's also a lot of other people that would actually consider 9mm to be incapable in this case, but I disagree. I actually have a whole video about it, link in the description. Now, a lot of people would prefer 40 or 45, but 9mm is perfectly capable. That's what most people will agree. I say 380 is still the absolute minimum, and I would not go below 380. It's not 1932 anymore. The 32 ACP is not an acceptable fighting cartridge. 380, however, especially once again with the same benefits that 9mm has going for it with modern ballistics and metallurgy and all that kind of stuff, is a perfectly capable cartridge for your CCW requirements. The biggest issue with a 380 is that a lot of time you don't have capacity. And that's the next trade-off in caliber. So if you go with a larger caliber, like say 45, in say a 1911, then yes, I've got a 45 caliber, projectile that I'm throwing down range. I got a lot of energy and mass and all that kind of stuff, but this single stack magazine only holds, this is a 7-rounder, and you can get up to 8-round flush fits and 10-round extended in a 45 ACP. If you shrink this to a smaller, lighter platform, you're getting like 5 or 6 rounds. It's not a lot of bullets, if that's your concern, if capacity is your concern. Now, you might hear some old FUDs say, well, if you can't solve it in 7, then it doesn't need to be solved. But that's just not reality. Criminals are ambush predators, and it does not mean that they work alone. They are just as likely to work in a pack like predators. The animal kingdom is still alive and well in humans. So you having more rounds on board should be sitting somewhere in your priorities. If that means that you carry additional magazines or you have higher capacity in your magazines, either option is acceptable. So, what do I want to grab next? So, 5 shots. Some people will tell you that 5 shots is more than enough, and 38 Special has a lot of back and forth on whether or not it has enough knockdown. You would almost consider this like a middle of the road option when it comes to power, and bottom of the road, end of the road, not the best option when it comes to capacity. Drive that all the way down to like a Glock 42 with a 6-round magazine in 380. Now, this gun is extremely easy to handle in 380. A lot of your 380 pocket pistols are very difficult to shoot, like your LCPs or your Smith & Wesson Bodyguard. Those are very difficult to control recoil and all that kind of stuff. But Glock 42, be it because of double captive recoil spring or Glock magic, this gun is extremely easy to shoot well and to keep on target, and doesn't have excessive recoil in a 380. So 6 rounds of 380 on target is better than 6 rounds of 45 ACP maybe on target. And that plays back into weight and size and all that kind of stuff. If you'll consider this BDA 380 holds 13 rounds. Well, that's a lot of 380s. So not only is that putting a bunch of rounds into my initial target to make sure that he goes down, but I've also even got some left over for his buddies in one magazine, let alone if I'm carrying a spare magazine. If I were to give you any piece of advice when it comes to selecting your concealed carry handgun, I would really stress that you give yourself options. Already by carrying a gun, you're giving yourself options. You can choose whether or not you want to enter the fray, if you even want to get into a shootout with somebody, or if you want to avoid. You have the possibility to be able to make that decision. If you have no gun, you pretty much only have the possibility to choose leave. That's your only option. Now, accuracy plays a very large part as well, especially when you get into different size handguns and you get into different sight arrangements. So, revolvers are fairly simple to operate, and a lot of times you'll see FUDs offer these as being the best gun for, say, women, because it never jams, and that, which is not true. And it's just simple. You just point it, and you just pull the trigger, and you pull the trigger until it stops working. Well, they also have really heavy triggers, so that could be a detriment to someone with not a lot of hand strength. And if you look at that sight arrangement on pretty much any revolver, any concealed carry size gun, which of course is going to be deburred and all that kind of stuff, so it doesn't grab on the clothing when it's drawn, it's going to have pretty terrible sights. Now, compare that to a lot of your semi-autos. Let's see, like say, this CZP-07 in 9mm. This has excellent sights, and they are even phosphorescent, which means they get charged by light in general, and then glow in the dark. So that gives you a lot of options right there. But that's all going to be based on size. The smaller you go, the worse your sights are going to get. The larger you go, the better sights you're going to get. Where's that ebb and flow? And all of this is a trade-off. There are very few one-size-fits-all solutions. Now, when it comes to one-size-fits-all solutions, what a lot of people, there it is, will throw out would be the Glock 19. This is a Glock 23, same kind of deal. The Glock 19 and to some extent the Glock 23 are some of the most popular concealed carry handgun options out there because they kind of bridge a gap and they encompass a lot of the positive attributes of this consideration list that I put together so far. They are simple. They don't have a lot of external things to get caught on. They have higher capacity. They're in a major caliber. And it's easier to shoot them well and accurately and controllably. And there's a ton of aftermarket options out there and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's a huge consideration for these handguns. However, you can't conceal this in lighter clothing. A lot of guys, once it hits summer, they stop carrying their Glock 19s and they start looking for smaller options like Glock 43s. Or Glock 42s, or if you're an XD guy for some reason, XDMs, or whatever it may be that you choose, they go away from these larger guns when weather gets hot and they start wearing less clothing. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. So, give yourself the options and make sure that you're also researching your local laws to know what you can and can't do. Now, the very last consideration is price. Now, it's a very expansive market that we're talking about right now. There's a lot of different amounts of money that you could pay. You could buy a Hi-Point 9 compact for under $200, and you would be armed. I don't know if I would call you well armed, but you would be armed, and I wouldn't detract that from you. I would suggest you replace that as soon as possible, but hey, you do you, boo. It's your money. You could also pay in the thousands of dollars for some of these concealed carry options out there. That's a decision that you have to make. If I had my choices, I would probably pay or try to make sure that I'm paying over $350, which would solidly put you around, say, like a Glock 42, 43, 43X into that type of category. That's just me. You know, there are a lot of people out there who are carrying, say, Taurus products. Name any of them. There's a variety, and I'm not honestly that familiar with them because I do not care for Taurus quality, which I find lacking. However, there are plenty of people who are out there carrying them, and they love them. I see them getting bought up left and right. I see them actually very seldom on the aftermarket, which is kind of surprising. So if anything, that tells you how happy owners are with them. If you're armed, you're armed. You know, be proficient with that weapon. And you know, price is a very individual thing. Different people value different things, and they place a dollar value on different things. A Hi-Point C9 would have you ready to go wherever it is that you need to go, just as much as, say, a SIG P365. You know, you're armed either way. I would still personally consider the guy with a 365 to be better armed, but you know, to each their own. This is very much so a personal thing, and I try to make sure, I always keep an eye out for deals, and I try to direct people whenever they ask me about stuff as to where I know deals are. Now, for me personally, guys, like I say, I have at some point carried all of these guns, and like I say, I scale based on what it is that I'm wearing something. I try to start out with carrying a Browning high-powered. Doesn't happen very often, and in summer like we are now, I don't even attempt to carry the Browning high-powered. Lately, what I've been primarily carrying, and what you would have seen me shooting in the intro, is this Glock 43X. This has been my go-to gun. This is, if you were looking for a recommendation out of this video, I would place a very solid recommendation on this gun. Call this a Cliff Notes for the review that I'll do sometime in the future. .10 round capacity, it's 9mm, and it's so accurate. I ran it in a competition here recently because it is my CCW gun, which is something to be said for going for a slightly larger CCW option, is that it is easier to train and compete with it because your magazines hold more rounds, and that's the most limiting thing about competitions, is you need to make sure you have enough rounds to get through the stage. And this gun actually, even on, like, I took it to that competition because it is a lower round count stage, and this still, I still had additional mag changes when other people didn't have to have them. So this is, if you're looking for a recommendation out of this video, this would be my recommendation. But that's just Cliff Notes. Stay tuned later for some time in the future when I unveil the video on that. Pending, of course. Before we go, guys, there is one last thing that we have to talk about if we're going to talk about concealed carry. And that is the first thing that I ask people when they come out of the blue and tell me that they want to start concealed carry. You have to be prepared for the possibility of taking somebody's life, and you have to be ready for that weight. It's not something to be taken lightly. It's not something to be trifled with. When you carry concealed, you're carrying the possibility of grievously hurting somebody else. And when you start down this path, you kind of have to make your decisions on what you're willing to do when it comes to that. How far are you willing to go? Are you willing to behave in a manner to protect a perfect stranger, or is that not worth it to you? If someone comes up and demands your wallet while you're alone, is the $20 in your wallet worth killing someone else over? You've got to make those choices. You need to make those choices sitting at home on your sofa before you go out in the world with your concealed carry handgun. The taking of human life should never be taken lightly. It deserves and requires a lot of forethought, and you need to make sure you have that done before you're on what is going to become an urban battlefield for you. All right, now on that heavy note, I'll go ahead and send us out on a little bit more competition footage. I hope this video was helpful, and you guys have a good day.